So my story starts the same way it does for many aspiring music producers. In my car, driving an hour commute every morning to work a job that is sucking the soul out of me. And every evening after work was spent making that same hour-long drive all the way back home, back to my mom's house where I lived because I couldn't really afford anything else. I was 24 years old, and it was starting to dawn on me that with each day, I had less and less time to pursue what I really wanted to do for a living, being a music producer. And I wasn't just a kid with a pipe dream either. I had actually been doing it. When I wasn't at my day job, I was working at a commercial recording studio in my hometown, bringing in my own clients. I would use Craigslist and social media to promote myself, and I had been working with clients since I was 14 years old, running my own little home studio. So at 24, I was already 10 years into this journey. But I still wasn't able to make producing a stable full-time income, which was super frustrating because I had like 200 records under my belt at that point. And by 2012, I had earnestly tried to go full-time with music 5 different times already. All failed. Every single time I would run out of money and have to go find a day job. Warehouses, hair salons, tech support, sales, whoever would be willing to hire a kid who didn't have a high school diploma. And I felt guilty because I was obviously very grateful to always have a job and a place to stay, but I just couldn't come to terms with the fact that this was it for me. This was life. Every day that I wasn't pursuing my real goals, it felt like there were bugs crawling all over my skin. It's the only way I can describe it. Complete discomfort, and I just didn't feel like I was being me. So one evening after a session at the studio, I just completely spilled my heart out to my mentor and told him that I wanted to quit my job, move to Los Angeles, and finally go for it. He said, based on my personal experience, if you don't go now, then you probably never will. So set a date and I'll drive out there with you. It was a sunny day in the summer of 2012 when I arrived to LA, and within 30 minutes of unpacking all of my stuff onto the couch I'd be crashing on, I experienced an intense feeling that I had never experienced before in my life. It was like a physical sensation that completely overtook my body, and out of nowhere, I had to throw up. It was an anxiety attack. First anxiety attack I ever had in my life was on day 1 living in LA. I went on to have at least one of those every single day for the first 3 months I lived there. And don't get me wrong, LA was exciting and I was proud of myself for taking the leap, but very quickly my savings was starting to run out and I could only crash on my friend's couch for like a month. That was the deal. So I needed to find some money fast. I interviewed at almost every big studio in town, and despite the interviews going well and meeting some really awesome people, there were just no job openings at that time. And on top of that, I was made aware that the skill set I had spent 10 years developing was kind of going out of style, and I had to essentially relearn what it meant to be a modern producer entirely. So then I tried getting a regular job just to tie me over, and after endless attempts, nothing worked out there either. I remember one time I tried to apply at a UPS store, and the manager said that based on my resume, I was overqualified for the job and that he couldn't hire me. And I remember thinking, buddy, if you actually knew me, you would know that I'm not overqualified for any job. I don't know if you've ever been rejected with a compliment before, but I never have. That must be an LA thing. But then a new person showed up in my life. He was a working actor in the film business and was related to a friend of mine back home. We met up for lunch and I told him, I've been here for a month and nothing seems to be going as planned. I had interviews at all the big recording studios that I wanted to work at. None of them are hiring. That's why I moved out here in the first place. And getting a regular job isn't working out either. I don't know what the hell to do. And he kind of just laughed in a nice way and said to me, Daniel, just moving here doesn't mean you are going for it. Fully going for it means that you are willing to Truly surrender to this and give everything you have to make it happen, and don't stop until you do. He sounded like he was in a movie when he said that. At this point, all I really had left to give was enough money for a deposit on an apartment so I could set up a little home studio and start taking my own clients again. Basically, do the exact same thing I did back in my hometown. So that's what I did. Every morning, I would wake up, walk down to McDonald's for a cheap coffee and get some sunlight, and then lock myself in the studio. I'd open up my computer, go to Craigslist, and I would start posting my own ads, charging only like $15 an hour for vocal recording or $200 to $300 to produce somebody's demo. And if I saw any other studios also promoting themselves on Craigslist, I would send them an email to offer myself as an assistant. And little did I know, the next person who would change my life was right there on Craigslist. This producer who had a super nice home studio that was up the road invited me over and actually paid me to assist for him. And I came to find out that this guy was making $400 to $600 per day writing, producing, and mixing songs for artists in his home studio. And he was so busy that he needed an assistant, me, to work some of his weekends so he could spend time with his family. If you're anything like me, you just started doing the math in your head. That's thousands of dollars per month making music. And the artists were barely there. They would just come over, do a vocal, and he would do everything else by himself. I had never seen anything like that back in 2012. I had only been in the studio with bands. I thought to myself, well, I can just use the internet, Craigslist, Google, Facebook, whatever was around at that time, to get some clients. I had already been doing that. But these clients don't need to be in the same room as me, which means they can live anywhere, which means I could have access to potentially thousands of clients and projects. And that's when it all finally clicked. That first year, I made around $40,000 producing music. Within a few years, that business was earning multiple six figures every year. By the end, we would end up doing over $1 million worth of projects. I had Grammy-winning producers asking me how I was doing it, and executives at big publishing companies encouraging me to continue growing the business. The founder of SoundBetter reached out to me and met up just because he thought we might be a competitor. I moved the company to Nashville where the taxes were cheaper, hired and developed a team of producers. We built a local studio too, got into sync, had songs chart on Billboard, got to work with Fortune 500 brands. We launched a YouTube channel and community called Make Pop Music and built multiple income streams with courses and sample packs. Up until now, my only dream in life was to make a full-time living and build a solid career with music. And I had achieved that goal to a level that was honestly totally beyond what I ever imagined. And if this was a Disney movie, then that would be the end of this video. Me and my dream job would ride off into the sunset and live happily ever after. But that is not the end to this story. Unfortunately, things spiraled out of control. So you know those videos on the internet, right, where the guy is standing in front of a beautiful ocean like this one and telling you about how he followed his dreams and found success and that you can too. My version of that story is a little different, and at the risk of sounding dramatic, at the lowest point of my career in 2017, I took the last little bit of money that I had to my name, came down here, rented a oceanfront hotel room very similar to the one that I'm at now, and through some really, really heavy drinking, tried to muster up enough courage to just end it here. I mean, that's where I was at. I could not see a light at the end of the tunnel. That was it. So, how the hell did I get here? I'd gotten completely sober when I was 18 and had stuck to it for 10 whole years while I was chasing my music goals. I contributed most of my success to being sober. But in the last year of running my music production company, I relapsed and broke my sobriety. And the reason was because I thought that achieving my goals would fill a void in myself. I was searching for a feeling and a validation that would finally make me feel comfortable in my own skin. And it just never came. No matter what we achieved, it never came. Everyone that worked for me eventually had gone off on their own. They all seemed to have a next step in their career path, a bigger vision for themselves beyond just working for me. But this was all I had. It was my only thing. I didn't have a vision for myself beyond achieving that first big goal. And what happened was that I started to feel extremely unfulfilled despite doing everything I had set out to do. And I just didn't know how to cope with that or face that reality. I left Nashville and I moved back home to the hometown that I was once so desperate to escape from. And I spent 16 months in the most self-destructive bender of my entire life and went all the way back down to zero. Financially, physically, mentally, and spiritually, zero. And it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. In February of 2018, I checked myself into a rehab, a place that I hadn't been since I was a teenager. And towards the end of the program, me and a group of other guys going through the same struggle had to each make a plan for what we were going to do for work to earn a living after the program was over. And for the first time in a few years, I finally felt that feeling of inspiration again, because when you're at the bottom, the only direction to go from there is up. And there's actually a lot of freedom to that. I could try anything that I wanted to try. And a few times during my 16-month bender, in a drunken state, I would fantasize about starting a business that helped other producers avoid what I was going through in that moment. And to be honest, I was probably just trying to make myself feel better about my situation. But now I was in a position where I could actually give that idea a fair shot. I had a ton of experience developing producers. I had built a successful music production company, and producers had already been asking me to help them with this stuff for like 2 or 3 years. So around 60 days sober, I sent one email to the Make Pop Music email list with an offer for producers. I would meet with them once a week, one-on-one, and personally help them get their business off the ground. And at first, I was definitely met with a ton of skepticism. I even had friends in the industry start to distance themselves from me because they were weirded out by this new direction I was taking. So initially, I thought this idea was dead on arrival. But within the first month, a small group of music producers decided to give me a shot, which I'll forever be grateful for. And my new business generated $14,000 that month, enough to help me pay off my medical bills and get back on my feet. I was always taught to believe that you only get one shot to make it in the music industry. I was told just choose one thing you want to be, artist or producer or manager, whatever, then go all in on that, and you'll either be one of the people that makes it or one that doesn't. That's it. And in my experience, that's just not a true representation of reality and how things go. As long as we're alive and breathing, we have another chance. And the goal that we first set out to achieve may open the door to some new idea that you would have never thought of in the first place. Everyone looks at success as arriving at some destination or reaching some benchmark, but I haven't found success to look like that at all. My little rehab business experiment is now bigger than my first music company. We've served over 600 clients, from small bedroom studios to Grammy winners, helping them on their own journey to financial stability, and over time, building the ideal version of their career, whatever that means to them individually. And you probably noticed that throughout my journey, I met not just one person that had all of the answers, but a lot of different people who provided me with the mentorship I needed to unlock that next level in my career. And that is the experience that we've replicated for the producers in our community at Dark Label. As I've grown up in the music industry and have gotten to work intimately with people who are at the top of their game, I've learned that seeking validation through success will not fill that void inside of you. And whatever will fill that void probably won't come from work or money at all. That will have to be found somewhere else, somewhere that doesn't have anything to do with any of this stuff. And to those that want to, I hope you hang in there long enough to truly learn that lesson, because it makes having a career in this industry a much easier, more enjoyable experience. I'm glad that I did.